So bear with me because this may be a little bit confusing, but first we're going to start obviously in Blender, which I'll leave a link to a rig that you can use down below. And so what we're going to do is head over to File and Open. And so we're going to locate the rig that we want to use. So mine is in my Sims creation folder underneath Sim Rigs and then Sims. So I'm going to use the female rig. Okay, sorry for the word cut. I had to go and enable the add-on that shows what key I'm using. So starting out, it's going to be very confusing and a lot to look at. So the best way that I say to go about it is to start with an easy pose. So I have a reference image pulled up on my other monitor, and I'll probably post editing, put it up on screen over here so you can see it. So what I always tend to do first is press A and then I, and that will set a keyframe. That way you can see every single joint that is on the rig. And this also helps with like any slip-ups that you may have. So then you have to be in pose mode. Sometimes it will start you out in object mode. The easiest way to tell is the color of the dots. So you don't have to do this whatsoever, but I prefer to. And so make sure you have select box selected. Go down to where it says global here and click local. Then to the right of it, do individual origins. Now this basically makes it to where when you do move different parts of the rig, it won't really contort and look like it's broken as easily. Then I go down here to this little symbol and it's show gizmo. I select rotate and move, and that just gives you an easier way to move it rather than the usual, which is using R and using like G to move it, which that can lead to the rig breaking a lot. And let me just scoot this down so you can see more. So I'll put the pose up here, that way it is easier to see. Because I know it can be very hard to see the photo sometimes. Should be this photo. I'm gonna assume that is Cynthia in a hat. That's not the right photo. So we're gonna find the correct one. It should be this one. Okay, yeah, it's this one. So I'm gonna pull it up here and make it a wee bit smaller. That way it's not taking up the entire space. So, and bring it back here so it doesn't clip into the rig. So this is going to be a fairly easy pose to start out with. So we're going to go back into object mode, which you do need to make sure you have the rig selected, and go back into pose mode. So starting out, you'll notice here that the hips are angled a bit. So you will always want to start with the lower body first, considering it will usually move before the rest of the body does. So what I'm gonna do is simply just rotate this a little bit and then pull it to the side quite a bit, since you can see that her hip is up. Now if you look down here, you'll see that the feet are out of place now, which is a pretty easy fix. All you have to do is just make sure that they're touching the red line. Because if they're not, then you will run into issues of like, say you go to use the pose in game, and for some reason the shoe is in the ground, but the like ankle is above. That's a very common mistake, and if you do make that mistake, it's very easy to fix. You just have to go in and move the feet again. And you can't really see the feet of the person posing. So I'm just gonna move the foot a little bit to where it makes a little bit more sense. So like that. And then you can also see here that her back is arched a little bit, but it looks like she's also turning while it is arched. So you're gonna grab this here, and this is the spine, and you're just gonna turn it until it looks like she's arched the correct way. So about to there. Now, you can't really see the side of this person, but if you turn to the side here, you'll see it does not look like the back is arched. So I'm just gonna pull back a little bit to here, and then I'm gonna pull this joint, wrong joint. I'm gonna pull this joint a little bit forward, like that. Now, arms are gonna be the hardest part. You kind of have to just get used to it, because a lot of people, if you look at other light tutorials, will say that like, oh, well, you can do this and this. I will say it is really honestly just something you have to get used to. Because see, sometimes even arms give me an issue, and I've been doing this for quite a bit. But you can see I'm just using the same angles and everything to try and get the arm to look how it should. And you do see that the wrist is turned a different direction. So just take the wrist like this, and then view the top view, and do that, then go back into the side, and angle it up. And then you can click off and see if the wrist looks like it's broken, which this is how a wrist will usually look. And then this arm is a little hidden, so what you're gonna do just to make it easier is just pull the arm back. And just a little bit that way. Now, this little dot here, it may look like you have the arm selected, but I can assure you, you do not. Because the moment you go to move it, you can see that that elbow is being kind of weird. So that is simply because sim rigs do not have elbows. You'll notice it when you play the game as well. Like, there's just not an elbow here. So you do have to click again, or else it will do that, and it is very hard to fix that once that happens. And so I'm just going to keep moving this into place. Now I'm going to show you a little trick that I like to do, because hands can be very hard. It's the same way with like drawing, it's hard to draw hands. So click one dot of the knuckle, then shift click the rest. Shift click the rest. There we go. I don't know why it didn't do it. And so we're gonna angle to where you look like you're facing head on with the fingertip. And just move it down like that. See, now we can go in individually and kind of make them look like they're actually moving, because you really do want to avoid the hand looking like it's frozen in time. And see, I can't see the hand now, so what I'm going to do is just move it like that. And then click back on the rig, and it's in pose mode already. So now we're going to move over to the other hand. And this one's going to be easier because you're just really spacing it out, kinda. And see, these two go together a little bit. So I'll space them out and then move this. Now we're going to move this part of the thumb and then move that. Now, the face and neck are going to be the hardest part. I'm not going to lie. So what I'm going to do is really quickly move this behind more. That way I can see. So She is facing straight on. And over here, you're gonna grab the head point and just angle it a little bit to the side like that. And she is looking down slightly, so I'm gonna fix that as well. Okay, so now this is where it gets a little hard because you're not always gonna get facial features correct your first time. Like I didn't, I don't know anyone that has, and I've never seen anyone do it. So I'm gonna pull her to where she's level with the face. Okay, so this is where the local and individual origins really comes in. Because you can see she's looking to the side. And usually you could move the eyes on their own, but you're gonna end up with wonky looking eyes, and that's very hard to fix. So I'm gonna go through this list here and left click left eye, then hold control, and then let me find the other eye, then click right eye. So that moves both of them if you move this. So she's looking to the right, so I'm gonna do that, and then angle these up the tiniest bit because she is looking up. Now notice how this sim just looks angry compared to how the person actually looks. So you're gonna go in and get the lower mouth area and pull it down because her mouth is also open. Now this is where you kind of want to just wing it and move the lips, but if you're not comfortable, you could keep them where they were. And the mouth was hanging open, so also you're just gonna do this, then make these a little bit lower to kind of give that puckered lip effect. And you wouldn't know it just looking from the front, but you can tell that her lips are kind of puckered, so you're gonna pull to the side and grab the middle dot on the lip. That way you're kind of giving, not really, what's the word? You're giving depth to how this looks. And her eyes are semi-closed. So we're gonna do the same thing that we did with the eyes, but for the eyelids. And so we're gonna get right upper lid, and then we're gonna get left upper lid. And just pull those slightly down. Then grab the left lower lid and the right lower lid, and then pull those up a bit. Now the eyebrows do look off, so we're gonna fix that by pulling them up a bit. Now one key crucial thing is that the cheeks are definitely puckered. And you could not add that in, but then you're not gonna really have the same look. And so I'm gonna pull the chin down a little bit. Then let's see, go in with the squint. I will have to pull that eyelid down. So lower lid and lower lid, and pull those down to there. Now this lip still doesn't look right, so I'm gonna work on it just a tiny bit. Because one good thing to remember is you can always work on something before you actually save the pose and finish it. So do that. And I am gonna rotate this hand a little bit, simply because I think it'd be better if it was like this. Let me grab the actual arm and do that. Okay, so that's where I'm gonna leave this, mainly because this is just to show how to do it instead of like make a full-fledged like pose that I would release and say that I'm happy with. So really quick, I'm gonna delete the photo, and you can see all of the dots are perfect. So what we're gonna do is click A again and see how it's in object mode. So we're gonna click the rig and it's in pose mode now. So A to select everything, then head to this little square box, which is object properties. So we're gonna click the little lock besides location and rotation. That way, let's say you don't click that and you put this into a package file and then you go in game and your sim just starts T-posing. So that will happen because you're not locking the ability for the sim to stay with the points on the rig. It's something that's kind of hard to explain, but if you've seen it happen, you know what it is. So once you have those selected and you still have this, click A one more time for good measure and click I. And that is going to set a keyframe on this little thing down here. It's going to set another keyframe. That way you basically, trying to think of how to explain it. It's almost as if you're like taking a photo and it just freezes in that moment. And so what I'm gonna do is go to File and Save As, and I'm gonna save it to my desktop, and I'm gonna say to pose and save it there. And save it there. Okay. And then next we're gonna go into Sims 4 Studio, which is the easier part. So now here comes the easy part, which if you have some knowledge of Sims 4 Studio, everything will be a breeze. But if you don't, I will go into depth so it's easier. So if you're wanting to upload these poses instead of personal use, make sure you put your like creator name down here. So you can see like my other projects here, but what we're gonna do is go over to animation and make sure that clip pack is selected. So we're gonna click animation and it's gonna tell us to name the file. So what I'm gonna do is just do the same name that I did and just put file on the end. And so what I'm gonna go ahead and do is just plop it into my mods folder. That way I don't have to move it over. So this will look scary, but I promise it'll be fine. So name, we're just gonna do the same thing, and you don't have to put a description. If you want to put an icon for your pose, the image resolution does have to be 64 by 64, which does suck, but you do have to do it. And so over here for clips, this is where you're gonna put the Blender file that you saved. So I'm gonna import, and I'm gonna look on my desktop and look for the thing that I did. So tutorial pose is here, and it may take a bit to import depending on like how complicated it is. So for the name, I'm just gonna put pose 1, and then that's basically it, which you can go to the warehouse and change all of this. I suggest not doing that. Then what I'm going to do is go back to pose, make sure it's named, and then just click save in the corner, and then it's saved.